Now we will continue the story of the girl who drank the moon, chapter 2 entitled In which an unfortunate woman goes quite mad. Grand Elder Gurland took his time that morning. The day of sacrifice only came once a year, after all, and he liked to look his best during the sober procession to the cursed house, and during the somber retreat. He encouraged the elders to do the same. It was important to give the populace a show. He carefully dabbed rouge on his sagging cheeks and lined his eyes with thick streaks of coal. He checked his teeth in the mirror, ensuring they were free of debris or goop. He loved that mirror. It was the only one in the protectorate. Nothing gave Gurland more pleasure than the possession of a thing that was unique unto him. He liked being special. The Grand Elder had ever so many possessions that they were unique in the protectorate. It was one of the perks of the job. The protectorate, called the Catile Kingdom by some and the City of Sorrows by others, was sandwiched between a treacherous forest on one side and an enormous bog on the other. Most people in the protectorate drew their livelihoods from the bog. There was a feature in bog walking, mothers told their children. Not much of a feature, you understand, but it was better than nothing. The bog was full of zerin shoots in the spring, and zerin flowers in the summer, and zerin bulbs in the fall, in addition to a wide array of medicinal and borderline magical plants that could be harvested, prepared, treated, and sold to the traders from the other side of the forest, who in turn transported the fruits of the bog to the free cities far away. The forest itself was terribly dangerous and navigable only by the road, and the elders owned the road, which is to say that Grand Elder Gurland owned the road and the other elders had their cut. The elders owned the bog too, and the orchards, and the houses, and the market squares, even the garden plots. This was why the families of the protectorate made their shoes out of reeds. This was why in lean times they feed their children the thick, rich broth of the bog, hoping that the bog would make them strong. This was why the elders and their families grew big and strong and rosy-cheeked on beef and butter and beer. The door knocked. "Enter." Grand Elder Gurland mumbled as he adjusted the drape of his robe. It was Antain, his nephew, an elder in training, but only because Gurland, in a moment of weakness, had promised the ridiculous boy's more ridiculous mother. But that was unkind. Antain was a nice enough young man, nearly 13. He was a hard-working and a quick study. He was good with numbers and clever with his hands, and could build a comfortable bench for a tired elder as quick as breathing. And despite himself, Gurland had developed an inexplicable and growing fondness for the boy. But Antain had big ideas, grand notions and questions. Gurland furrowed his brow. Antain was, how could he put it, overly keen. If this kept up, he'd have been to be dealt with blood or no. The thought of it weighed upon Gurland's heart like a stone. "Uncle Gurland," Antain nearly bowled his uncle over with his insufferable enthusiasm. "Come yourself, boy." The elder snapped. "This is a solemn occasion." The boy calmed visibly, his eager, dog-like face tilted toward the ground. Gurlan resisted the urge to pat him gently on the head. "I have been sent," Antain continued in a mostly soft voice, "to tell you that the other elders are ready, and all the populates who ways along the route. Everyone is accounted for." "Each one? There are no shirkers? After last year, I doubt there ever be again," Antain said with a shudder. "Pity." Gurlen checked his mirror again, touching up his rouge. He rather enjoyed teaching the occasional lesson to the citizens of the Protectorate. It clarified things. He tapped the sagging folds under his chin and frowned. "Well, nephew," he said with an artful swish of his robes, one that had taken him over a decade to perfect, "let us be off. That baby isn't going to sacrifice itself after all." And he flowed into the street with Antain stumbling at his heels. Normally, the day of sacrifice came and went with all the pomp and gravity that it ought. The children were given over without protest. Their numb families mourned in silence, with pots of stew and nourishing foods heaped into their kitchens, while the comforting arms of neighbors circled around them to ease their bereavement. Normally, no one broke the rules, but not this time. Grand Elder Gurland pressed his lips into a frown. He could hear the mothers howling before the procession turned into the final street. The citizens began to sheep uncomfortably where they stood. When they arrived at the family's house, an astonishing sight met the council of elders. A man with a scratched-up face and a swollen lower lip and bloody bald spots across his skull where his hair had been torn out in clumps met them at the door. He tried to smile, but his tongue went instantly to the gap where a tooth had just recently been. He sucked in his lips and attempted to bow instead. "I am sorry, sirs," said the man, the father presumably. "I don't know what has gotten into her. It's like she's gone mad." From the rafters above them, a woman screeched and howled as the elders entered the house. Her shiny black hair flew about her head like a nest of long, writhing snakes. She hissed and spat like a cornered animal. She clung to the ceiling beams with one arm and one leg, while holding a baby tightly against her breast with the other arm. "Get out!" she screamed. "You cannot have her. I spit on your faces and curse your names. Leave my home at once, or I shall tear out your eyes and throw them to the crows." The elders stared at her, open-mouthed. They couldn't believe it. No one fought for a doomed child. It simply wasn't done. Antain alone began to cry. He did his best to hide it from the adults in the room. Gurland, thinking fast, affixed a kindly expression on his scraggy face. He turned his palms toward Mother to show her that the meant no harm. He gritted his teeth behind his smile. All this kindness was nearly killing him. "We are not taking her at all, my poor, misguided girl," Gurland said in his mother's most patient voice. "The witch is taking her. We are simply doing as we're told." The mother made a guttural sound, deep in her chest like an angry bear. Gurland laid his hand on the shoulder of the perplexed husband and gave a gentle squeeze. "It appears, my good fellow, that you are right. Your wife has gone mad." He did his best to cover his rage, with a facade of concern. A rare case, of course, but not without precedent. We must respond with compassion. She needs care, not blame. Liar, the woman spat. The child began to cry, and the woman climbed even higher, putting each foot on parallel rafters and bracing her back against the slope of the roof, trying to position herself in such a way that she could remain out of reach while she nursed the baby. The child calmed down instantly. "If you take her," she said with a growl, "I will find her. I will find her and take her back. You see if I won't." "And face the witch?" Gerland laughed. "All on your own? Oh, you pathetic lost soul." His voice was honey, but his face was a glowing ember. "Grief has made you lose your senses. The shock has shattered your poor mind. No matter, we shall heal you, dear, as best as we can. Guards!" He snapped his fingers and armed guards poured into the room. They were a special unit provided as always by the Sisters of the Star. They wore bows and arrows slung across the backs and shorts, sharp swords sheathed at their belts, their long braided hair looped around their waist, where it was tinged tight, a testament to their years of contemplation and combat training at the top of the tower. Their faces were implacable as stones, and the elders, despite their power and stature, edged away from them. The sisters were a frightening force not to be trifled with. "Remove the child from the lunatic's clutches, and escort the poor dear to the tower," Gerland ordered. He glared at the mother of the rafters, who had gone suddenly very pale. "The Sisters of the Star know what to do with the broken minds, my dear. I'm sure it hardly hurts at all." The guard was efficient, calm, and utterly ruthless. The mother didn't stand a chance. Within moments she was bound, hobbled, and carried away. Her howls echoed through the silent town, ending suddenly when the tower's great wooden doors slammed shut, locking her inside. The baby, on the other hand, once transferred into the arms of the Grand Elder, whimpered briefly and then turned her attention to the sagging faces in front of her, all wobbles and creases and folds. She had a sullen look to her, calm, skeptical, and intense, making it difficult for Gerland to look away. She had black curls and black eyes, luminous skin like polished amber. In the center of her forehead she had a birthmark in the shape of a crescent moon. The mother had a similar mark. Common lore instead that such people were special. Gerland disliked lore. As a general rule, he certainly disliked it when citizens of the Protectorate got in their heads to think themselves better than they were. He depended on his frown and leaned in close. Wrinkling his brow, the baby stuck out her tongue. Horrible child, Gerland thought. "Gentlemen," he said with all the ceremony he could muster, "it is time." The baby chose the particular moment to let loose a large, warm, wet stain across the front of Gerland's robes. He pretended not to notice, but inwardly he fumed. She had done it on purpose. He was sure of it. What a revolting baby! The procession was as usual somber, slow, and insufferably plodding. Gurland felt he might go mad with impatience. Once the protectorate's gates closed behind them, though, and the citizens returned with their melancholy broods of children to their drab little homes, the elders quickened their pace. "But what why are we running, uncle?" Antain asked. "Hush, boy," Gurland hissed, "and keep up. No one liked being in the forest away from the road, not even the elders, not even Gurland. The area just outside the protectorate walls was safe enough, in theory, but everyone knew someone who had accidentally wandered too far, and fell into a sinkhole or stepped in a mud pot boiling off most of their skin, or wandered into a swale where the air was blood, and never returned. The forest was dangerous. They followed a winding trail to the small hollow surrounded by 5 ancient trees, known as the Witch Hand Maidens, or 6. Didn't it used to be 5? Gerlin glared at the trees, counted them again, and shook his head. There were 6, no matter. The forest was just getting to him. Those trees were almost as old as the world after all. The space inside of the ring of trees was mossy and soft, and the elders laid the child upon it, doing their best not to look at her. They had turned their backs on the baby and started to hurry away when their youngest member cleared his throat. "So, we just leave her here?" Antain asked. "That's how it's done?" "Yes, nephew," Gurland said. "That is how it's done." He felt a sudden wave of fatigue settling on his shoulders like an ox yoke. He felt his spine start to sag. Antain pitched his neck, a nervous habit that he couldn't break. "Shouldn't we wait for the witch to arrive?" The other elders fell into an uncomfortable silence. "Come again?" Elder Raspin, the most decrepit of the elders, asked. "Well, surely," Antain's voice trailed off. "Surely we must wait for the witch," he said quietly. "What would become of us if wild animals came first and carried her off?" The other elders stared at the grand elder, their lips tight. "Fortunately, nephew," he said quickly, leading the boy away, "that has never been a problem." "But," Antain said, pinching his neck again so hard he left a mark. "But nothing," Gurland said, a firm hand on the boy's back, striding quickly down the well-trodden path. And one by one the elders filed out, leaving the baby behind. They left knowing all but Antain that it was not a matter of if the child were eaten by animals, but rather that she surely would be. They left her knowing that there surely wasn't a witch. There never had been a witch. There were only a dangerous forest and a single road and a thin grip on a life that the elders had enjoyed for generations. The witch. That is the belief in her. Made for a frightened people, a subdued people, a compliant people who live their lives in a saddened haze, the clouds of their grief numbing their senses and dampening their minds. It was terribly convenient for the elders. An encumbered rule, and pleasant too, of course, but that couldn't be helped. They heard the child whimper as they tramped through the trees, but the whimpering soon gave way to the swamp sighs and bird songs, and the woody creaking of trees throughout the forest. And each elder felt as sure could be that the child wouldn't live to see the morning, and that they would never hear her, never see her, never think of her again. They thought she was gone forever. They were wrong, of course.